I want to tell you about the exact second a dangerous man forgot I was not really his wife. There were 12 people at the table, but when Don Lucio Sabatini stood up, every chair went silent. I was wearing a midnight blue dress that cost more than 3 months of flour. The diamonds at my throat were borrowed. The ring on my left hand was not mine. Even the hand resting over mine belonged to a man who had paid me to be there. 8 nights of rehearsal, 1 private dinner, 1 envelope large enough to save Brandt's bakery. Those were the terms. Smile when he looked at me. Know how he took his coffee. Call him Lucio instead of Don. Let his rival believe that the most feared man in the city had become settled, predictable and safe to trust. Then Vittorio Falco leaned back in his chair and laughed at my body. "Lucio," he said, loud enough for the polished women beside him to smile. "You could have brought any woman in this city, and this is what you chose. Tell me the truth. Is she your wife, or did you marry the cook?" The old heat climbed my neck. I knew that heat. I had carried it through school cafeterias, wedding receptions, job interviews, and one short marriage to a man who believed loving me was a favor I should spend my life repaying. I tightened my fingers around my napkin and repeated the only fact that mattered. 2 more hours. Take the envelope, save the bakery. But Falco was not finished. He slid a cream-colored document across the table. At the top was the black falcon logo I had seen on every rent increase, every invented violation, and every letter promising that my mother's bakery would soon become rubble beneath luxury apartments. "Perhaps your cook can cater the demolition party," he said. "Brandt's closes at the end of the month. My company owns the block now." That was when Lucio's hand left mine. He set down his glass so gently that the small click sounded louder than a gunshot. I had spent 8 nights learning his silences. There was the silence he used when he was amused, the silence he used when he was measuring a lie. And there was this one, the silence that made 2 armed men near the door straighten without being told. Lucio rose. "That's my wife you're laughing at," he said. Falco smiled, but only with his mouth. "It was a joke." "No," Lucio said. "A joke is something both people survive with their dignity. What you just gave me was information." He lifted the unsigned alliance papers from the table. The deal represented access to the riverfront, 3 unions, and more money than I could imagine. It was the reason I had been hired, the reason for the dress, the ring, the lie. Lucio tore the papers once, straight down the center. "You came into my house," he said, "threatened my wife's life's work and expected me to reward you for it. There is no alliance. There is no arrangement. And if 1 brick falls from Brandt's bakery, every person in this room will know whose fear made it fall." Falco's face changed. Not anger, fear. Lucio pulled out my chair and offered me his hand. "Sadie, we're leaving." As I stood, I realized the most powerful man at that table had burned the most valuable deal of his year for a woman he was only pretending to love. And the thought that frightened me was not that he had forgotten the arrangement. It was that somewhere between the first cardamom bun and the borrowed ring, I had forgotten it too. But to understand why Lucio was willing to start a war over a bakery, you need to know what he saw the first night he walked through my door. It was not a helpless woman waiting to be rescued. It was a professional 3 men had already underestimated, and a shop I was prepared to defend with or without a Don beside me. My name is Sadie Brandt. I was 34 years old, plus-size, divorced, permanently flour-dusted, and very good at my job. Not cute good, not she makes lovely little cakes good. I was the youngest baker in my state to earn master certification. I could tell the hydration of dough by the drag against my wrist. I could walk into a kitchen, smell the air, and tell whether the starter was hungry. The butter had warmed too far, or the overnight proof had run 10 minutes long. My mother taught me instinct. Years of training taught me the science underneath it. At 4 every morning, while most of the city slept, I mixed 180 kilos of dough, checked 3 fermentation schedules, balanced wholesale orders, repaired whatever the old ovens had decided to complain about, and opened the doors by 7 with warm bread on the shelves and no evidence that anything had nearly gone wrong. That is what expertise looks like most days. Not applause, prevention. Brandt's had stood on the same corner for 42 years. My mother opened it with 2 second-hand ovens and a loan no respectable bank would have given a widowed woman. She raised me in the apartment upstairs. I learned fractions by weighing flour, and grief by making bread the morning after her funeral, because the starter did not care that my hands were shaking. 3 years after she died, the bread was still excellent. The business was dying. A development company called Falcon Urban Holdings had purchased the buildings around us through shell companies. First the laundromat closed, then Mr. Park's grocery, then the tailor who had hemmed every school uniform in the neighborhood for 20 years. Each closure made the block quieter. Each empty window made the next tenant easier to frighten. They could not legally evict me yet, so they made survival expensive. Maintenance fees, inspection fees, a delivery access surcharge for an alley my mother had used since 1984. They tripled the rent, delayed repairs, and sent men with clean shoes to photograph the cracks in my walls as if the cracks belonged to me. I fought them with spreadsheets, tenant statutes, and the kind of rage that learns to use a highlighter. I also made mistakes. I stopped sleeping. I accepted wholesale contracts with margins too thin because losing customers felt like surrender. I worked injured. I told everyone I was fine because a large, cheerful woman is allowed to be funny or strong. But people become uncomfortable when she is honestly afraid. At midnight, after a 16-hour day, I sat at my mother's steel table with the ledger open. I needed $240,000 to buy the lease, clear the penalties, and repair the ovens. I had $27,000 in reserve and a bank manager who used the phrase non-traditional risk profile while staring at my body instead of my accounts. 4 months. That was what I had left. I was checking the numbers for the third time when the bell above the door rang 10 minutes before closing. The man who entered wore a charcoal coat that fit too well to have come from a normal store. He was around 45, broad through the shoulders, gray at the temples, and so still that the room seemed to arrange itself around him. He studied the nearly empty display case. "What is left?" he asked. 3 cardamom buns, half a sourdough, and my patience. The patience is not for sale." His mouth almost moved. "Then I will take the food." He came back the next night, and the night after that. On the third night, I noticed the black sedan across the street. On the fourth, the stranger looked at my open ledger and said, "You are about to lose this place." That was when I understood he had not come for the bread. "Sit down, Mrs. Brandt," he said. "Miss, and if you have been watching me for 4 nights, you should know that." I knew. I wanted to see whether you would correct me. Why? Because I need a woman who corrects powerful men. That was the first honest answer Don Lucio Sabatini gave me. He placed his card on the table. His name meant little to me then, but I knew the symbol embossed beneath it. A silver crown crossed by a single black line. People in my neighborhood lowered their voices around that symbol. "You're Mafia," I said. "People use many words. Do people use Mafia?" "Frequently." I should have called the police, though something in his expression suggested the police already knew where he drank his coffee. Instead, I folded my arms. What does a mafia boss want with a bakery? "A wife," I laughed. I could not help it. His face did not change. "Not permanently," he said. "One dinner." 8 days from now. Falco, he explained, controlled the riverfront corridor. Lucio needed to protect several legitimate businesses from being swallowed by outside investors. Falco distrusted unmarried men. In Falco's world, a man without a wife had no anchor and therefore no predictable weakness. Lucio needed to look settled, human, and attached to something beyond power. "Hire an actress," I said. "Falco employs actresses. He knows what performance looks like." "A model, then." A beautiful stranger appearing beside me 1 week before negotiations would look purchased. "And I would not?" He held my gaze. He did not soften the answer. "You would look impossible to invent. A real baker with flour beneath her nails. A woman with her own name above her own door. You are not decorative, and you do not become smaller when a man enters the room. No one in my world would believe I rented that. They would believe I had fallen for it." The compliment landed inside an insult and the insult inside a truth. I did not know which part hurt. "You mean I'm too ordinary to be suspicious?" "No, I mean you're too specific to be fake." Then he named the amount he would pay me. $250,000, 10,000 more than the number in my ledger. I went cold. "You looked at my books." "No, I watched what you circled, what you crossed out, and how long you stared at the final line. I am good at reading negotiations. This is not a negotiation. Everything is a negotiation. The honest ones simply admit the price." He slid a contract toward me. 8 days of preparation, 1 dinner, no physical intimacy required, no illegal activity, full payment whether the alliance succeeded or failed, a security detail during the arrangement, complete freedom to walk away before the dinner with a smaller preparation fee. I read every line. He waited. There is one rule not written there, he said. The world receives the performance. Between us, there are no lies. If I ask a question, you may refuse to answer, but you may not lie. I will give you the same. Why? His eyes moved toward the dark window. Because every person close to me wants something. Money, protection, access, survival. For 8 days, I would like one person whose price is already written down. There was loneliness in the sentence, but he delivered it like a business term. I thought of my mother's hands guiding mine through dough. I thought of Falcon Holdings measuring my windows. I thought of losing the smell of cardamom at 4 a.m.
I have rules too, I said. You do not touch me without asking. You do not make decisions about my bakery. You do not buy my gratitude. And if anyone speaks about me like I am an object you purchased, I answer them myself before you answer for me. For the first time, Lucio smiled fully. Agreed. I signed Sadie Brandt beneath his name. Then he picked up the contract and said, "We begin tomorrow." I did not yet know that by tomorrow someone would already be watching the bakery. The first lesson in pretending to be married is that facts are useless without habits. Anyone can memorize where a man was born.
A wife knows he removes his watch when he is worried. Anyone can learn that he drinks coffee without sugar. A wife reaches for the cup before he asks and turns the handle toward his right hand because an old break in his left wrist aches when it rains. Lucio arrived after closing every night. He never brought the same driver twice. He sat at the window table while I finished the next morning's dough, and we built a history between batches. We decided we had met 6 months earlier when he came in during a storm. He had ordered a cardamom bun. I had told him not to stand in front of the door unless he intended to keep the rain out personally. "That sounds like you," he said. "It happened. You just weren't the man. Should I be jealous? If you want to perform marriage accurately, yes, quietly and without becoming tedious." He wrote that down. I laughed so hard I had to put down the bowl. He learned that I hated roses because funeral homes ruined them for me. I learned he read paper books because screens made every message feel like work. He learned I slept with a fan on even in winter. I learned he had a younger brother named Matteo who had died at 19, and that Lucio still touched the empty chair beside him when he spoke the name. The truth rule changed the rehearsals. It removed all the harmless little lies people use to stay comfortable. "Why did your husband leave?" he asked on the second night. I could have refused. Instead, I folded dough and said, "Because he liked me best when I was grateful. When I became successful enough to stop apologizing for existing, he called me difficult. Then he found someone easier to impress." Lucio watched my hands. "Did he ever hurt you?" "Only in ways that don't photograph." Something cold moved through his face. "He is alive?" That is not a romantic question when you ask it like that. It was not intended romantically. "He is alive, far away, and irrelevant."
Keep him that way?
Lucio inclined his head. Boundary heard. Boundary kept. On the third night, he asked me to explain bread, not the recipe, bread. So I told him about fermentation, pressure, time, and heat. I told him a baker does not force dough to become ready. She creates the conditions, pays attention, and acts at the exact moment the structure can hold what comes next. "That sounds like strategy," he said. "It is. Mine just smells better." He began asking about my wholesale contracts. Within 10 minutes, I realized he understood leverage. Within 20, he realized I understood margins better than 2 of his accountants. "You hid this," he said. "From whom?" "You never asked whether I was competent. You asked whether I could be convincing in a dress." He accepted the correction without defense. "Then I am asking now, how good are you?" I looked around the bakery my mother and I had kept alive through a recession, a pandemic, her illness, and 3 predatory landlords. Good enough that Falcon Holdings has spent 18 months trying to starve me because they cannot beat me honestly. His eyes sharpened at the company name, but before he could ask more, headlights swept across the window. A man across the street raised a phone and photographed us. Lucio moved before I understood what I had seen. He put his body between mine and the glass, and the rehearsal stopped feeling like a game. The photographer disappeared into a black car before Lucio's men reached the pavement. Lucio did not chase him. He closed the blinds, locked the front door, and stood with one hand inside his coat while his driver checked the kitchen entrance. "Who was that?" I asked. "Falco's people, most likely." "You said no illegal activity. You're not involved in any." "He is verifying my story." "By photographing me through my own window?" "Yes." "Then your story has already cost more than the contract says." He looked at me. "You're right. Men like my former husband treated an admission like blood in water. Lucio gave it cleanly. "The arrangement ends now if you want it to," he said. "You keep the preparation fee. I place security outside until I know Falco has lost interest." No. No to ending it, or no to security. No to strangers standing outside my bakery frightening customers. "Sadie, you promise not to make decisions about my shop." His jaw tightened. I could see the dawn in him, the man accustomed to solving danger by controlling every door. But he did not order me. "Tell me what protection you will accept." That question was the first moment I became afraid of liking him. We negotiated one plain car half a block away during closing hours. No men inside unless I invited them. A silent alarm beneath the counter. My employees would be told there had been neighborhood thefts, nothing more. Lucio gave me a direct number that bypassed every assistant he employed. "If you press it," he said, "I answer. What if you're negotiating with a rival Dawn?" Then he learns patience. The next morning, a brick came through the bakery window at 4:12. It did not hit me. It shattered the display case and buried the first tray of cardamom buns in glass. Tied around it was a strip of cream paper stamped with a black falcon. 2 words were written beneath it. "Sell now." Lucio arrived in 7 minutes. I knew because I counted every second while holding the bread peel like a weapon. He entered alone, saw the blood on my palm from one careless piece of glass, and became terrifyingly quiet. "I'm fine," I said. "That is a lie. I am functional. That is not the same thing." He opened a first aid kit, then stopped before touching me. "May I?" I gave him my hand. The most feared man in the city cleaned a shallow cut from a baker's palm while Dawn turned the broken window gray. His hands were careful. His anger was not. "You need to leave the apartment upstairs," he said. "No, this is no longer a photograph. And this is no longer only about your dinner. That paper came from Falcon Holdings. They have been threatening this block for months. I leave now, they learn fear works." He tied the bandage and looked at me for a long moment. "Then I stay until the window is repaired. You have an empire to run. For the next 2 hours, my empire is a broken bakery window." He called a glazier. Then he rolled up the sleeves of a shirt that probably cost more than my mixer and helped me throw away ruined bread. He was terrible with a broom. He was worse with dough. But he stayed at the front door until the new glass was fitted, and every time a car slowed outside, he placed himself between it and me without making a show of it. That morning, he protected my body. What frightened me was how carefully he protected my right to remain myself. On the 5th day, Lucio took me to a private atelier for the dress fitting. The designer looked at my measurements, looked at the rack, and made the small, defeated sound people make when they want you to know your body has inconvenienced them. "With more time," she said, "we could disguise the middle, perhaps a cape over the arms. Something structured to create a more forgiving line." I met my reflection. For 1 second I was 14 again, standing under changing room lights while my aunt explained which parts of me needed hiding. Then I remembered who I was. "I do not need a forgiving dress," I said. "The dress has done nothing wrong, and neither have I. Bring me the midnight blue silk. Cut it to follow my body. Do not build a tent and call it elegance." The designer glanced at Lucio, expecting the paying man to decide. He did not look at her. He looked at me. "You heard my wife," he said. My heart made a stupid, dangerous movement. "Fake wife," I reminded him when the designer left. "Not in this room. Falco's people may be anywhere. Convenient. Very, the finished dress did not hide me. It honored the shape already there. Midnight blue, square neckline, strong waist, soft skirt." When I stepped from behind the screen, Lucio forgot to stand. He simply stared. I had been stared at before. Usually men calculated, too much here, not enough there. Lucio looked as if someone had opened a locked room inside him, and he was annoyed to discover light. "Say something," I said. "Falco will believe me. That is not a compliment. It is the safest version of one I can currently manage." Back at the bakery, we practiced dancing because Falco sometimes ended negotiations with music and expected couples to join him. Lucio placed one hand near my waist and waited. "You may," I said. His palm settled against the small of my back. Firm, warm, protective without pressing. I rested my hand on his shoulder and became aware of every inch between us. "You count under your breath," he said. "Bakers count everything. You are leading. You're slow. No one has ever said that to me." "Your employees are cowards," he laughed. Not the restrained breath I had heard before. A real laugh, low and surprised, and I lost the count. I stepped on his shoe. He caught me closer. The bakery went still around us. His eyes dropped to my mouth. Mine went to the pale line near his collar. How did you get that scar? I asked, because the alternative was kissing him. He answered, because of the truth rule. Matteo, the night my brother died, I tried to reach him through broken glass. I was too late. The grief in his face was old enough to have become architecture. I touched the scar with one finger. He closed his eyes. Lucio, I whispered. His phone rang. He stepped back before either of us could decide whether to hate or thank it. The call lasted less than a minute. When he ended it, the warmth had left his face. Falco moved the dinner forward, he said. Tomorrow night, we had lost 2 days, and there was one thing I still had not told him. Lucio opened Falco's dossier on the window table. Photographs, companies, properties. Men who smiled too easily beside politicians. At the top of one page was Vittorio Falco's face, younger than I expected and polished in the way cruelty often is when it has money. Behind him, on a glass wall, was the Black Falcon logo. My stomach dropped. Falcon Urban Holdings, I said. Lucio looked at me. You know it. I showed him the cream threat from the brick. Then I brought down the folder I kept above the flour invoices, rent notices, inspection photographs, shell company registrations, every letter I had collected while fighting for the block. Lucio read the first page and went very still. How long have you known Falco was connected? I knew the logo. I did not know the man until tonight. Why did you not show me this after the window? There it was, the truth rule, waiting like a blade. Because I was afraid you would cancel the dinner. I would have. Exactly. Then I would lose the full payment and he would still own my building. Your safety is worth more than the payment. To you, the bakery is my mother's whole life. You do not get to assign its value for me. His eyes flashed. And you do not get to hide an active threat from the man responsible for bringing it to your door. Falco was at my door before you. The brick came after he saw us together. We stared at each other across the little table where we had promised honesty. He was right. So was I. That is the cruel thing about real arguments. Sometimes nobody gets the comfort of being completely innocent. I'm sorry I withheld it. I said, that was dishonest. Even if every word I spoke was technically true. His shoulders lowered a fraction. And I am sorry, he said, that my first instinct was to decide for you. He closed the dossier. The arrangement ends. You receive the full amount. No, Sadie. Listen before you become a don at me. Falco thinks I'm decoration. He thinks you chose me because I'm harmless. He thinks the woman whose shop he is stealing will sit at his table and not recognize him. That is an advantage. I will not use you as bait. Then use me as a partner. He looked at the folders again. I showed him what I had found. Falcon Holdings claimed control of the entire block, but one delivery easement crossed Brandt's property under a covenant written decades earlier. Falco needed my signature to consolidate the parcel cleanly. That was why he had pressured instead of evicted me. He did not own the last piece. I did. He lied to you, I said. If his riverfront proposal includes my block, his title is incomplete. He needs your alliance before anyone discovers the gap. Lucio read the covenant twice. Then he looked at me with something new in his face. Not attraction. Respect sharpened into awe. You found this yourself? I told you, I'm good at my job. My job includes making sure there is still a bakery in which to bake. He leaned back. Tomorrow night Falco expects me to bring a weakness, he said. Instead, I am bringing the only person in the room who knows where his deal can break. Does that mean the arrangement continues? Only if you choose it after hearing the new terms. What new terms? You leave the moment you feel unsafe. You answer him in your own voice. And whatever happens to the alliance, your payment is already in escrow. He cannot cost you the bakery. Neither can I. I held out my hand. Partners? Lucio took it. Partners. But when he released me, his thumb crossed the rented ring finger as if the ring were already there. Neither of us mentioned it. The night before the dinner became our last rehearsal. We reviewed Falco's questions, the property covenant, and the exit routes. Lucio showed me the silent signal that meant leave now, 2 fingers against the stem of his glass. I showed him the difference between a frightened Sadie and an angry one. How will I know? He asked. If I am frightened, I get quiet. If I am angry, someone else should become frightened. Useful. At midnight, the work was done. Neither of us moved. Rain pressed softly against the new window. The repaired glass reflected us at the little table. A baker in an apron. A Don with his tie loosened. Two people who had invented 6 months of marriage and somehow reached the part where silence felt domestic. "Why have you never married?" I asked. He turned the coffee cup. "Because the moment a woman knows what I am, she becomes a negotiation. Every kind word passes through a question. What does she want? Who sent her? What will it cost?" I decided loneliness was cleaner. That is a terrible reason. It has been effective at making you lonely, yes. No defense, just truth. "Why did you really choose me?" I asked. Not the answer about Falco believing a baker. The private answer. His gaze lifted to mine. "The first night, you gave a homeless man soup after telling him the kitchen was closed. You pretended it was an extra order so he would not have to thank you. The second night, your mixer failed. You cried for exactly 40 seconds in the pantry, washed your face and repaired it yourself. The third night, a customer insulted the girl at your register and you removed him without raising your voice. I had not known he saw any of that. You were exhausted and afraid," he continued, "and still kind without performing kindness, strong without requiring witnesses. I came back for the bread because that was the only reason I could admit." My throat tightened. "That sounds dangerously like a kind thing. There is no angle, Sadie." The truth rule had made the fake marriage the only honest place either of us possessed. He stood to leave, then stopped at the door. "Tomorrow, if I touch you, it may be part of the performance. If I say something intimate, it may be because Falco is watching. I need you to remember that. Of course, I do not want you hurt because you mistake an act for a promise. I won't." We looked at each other. It was the only lie either of us told during those 8 nights. Lucio stepped into the rain. I locked the door and leaned my forehead against the glass. In 12 hours, I would put on his ring. By dawn, either the bakery would be safe, or the most dangerous men in the city would know exactly how much it mattered to me. The dinner took place above a restaurant with no name on the door. Lucio arrived at the bakery himself. No assistant, no driver at the curb. For one suspended second, he stood beneath the old Brandt sign and looked at me in the midnight blue dress. "Will Falco believe you?" I asked. "I am beginning to worry everyone will." He opened a velvet box. Inside was an antique sapphire ring, not the plain rental we had practiced with. "This belonged to my mother," he said. "Falco knows it. He will expect my wife to wear it. And if I lose it? I will lose something far more important tonight if I fail to bring you home safely." He slid the ring onto my finger only after I nodded. At the restaurant entrance, camera phones turned toward us. Falco had arranged that. Proof of Lucio's wife would become rumor before dessert. Lucio placed his hand at my back. "Too much?" he murmured. "No. Too little?" I almost smiled. "Ask me again when we are not surrounded by criminals. That may limit our opportunities." The private room glowed with candlelight and money. 12 guests, 4 guards, Falco at the opposite end, glossy and smiling. The Cream Alliance papers waited beside his plate. Every woman at the table was thin, polished, and dressed to communicate that discomfort had never touched her. Their eyes moved over me, then to Lucio, waiting for the joke to reveal itself. I felt the old instinct to shrink. Lucio leaned close. "You look like the only real thing in this room. Let them adjust." The line was not rehearsed. I lifted my chin. For the first hour, we were extraordinary. Falco tested us. Where had we met? Who apologized first after an argument? What did Lucio eat when he could not sleep? Which side of the bed was mine? I answered with the facts we had built and the truths beneath them. "He pretends not to like sweet things," I said, "then steals the center of every cardamom bun." Lucio looked offended. "Steals? I pay. For the bun, not for the part I was saving." The table laughed with us, not at us. Falco watched the way Lucio's thumb moved over my knuckles. I felt the moment he believed. Then the property discussion began. Falco described a complete riverfront portfolio. He said Falcon Holdings controlled every necessary parcel. Lucio asked neutral questions while I listened. Falco lied 3 times. The 4th time, he looked directly at me. "Your wife seems bored," he said. "Perhaps development is too complicated for a baker." This was the moment we had prepared for. I smiled. Not at all. Bakers understand what happens when one missing piece makes the entire structure collapse. Falco's fork stopped halfway to his mouth, and Lucio's hand closed gently over mine beneath the table, not to silence me, to tell me he was there. Falco recovered quickly. Then perhaps Mrs. Sabatini has an opinion. Sadie Brandt, I said. I kept my name. One of the women looked down to hide a smile. Falco did not. Of course, Brandt. As in Brandt's bakery. The room changed. He had known who I was before we entered. The questions, the laughter, the alliance papers, all of it had been arranged around a trap. You chose an interesting wife, Lucio, he said. Her little shop sits in the middle of our proposed corridor, a sentimental inconvenience. Lucio's expression remained smooth. My wife is rarely an inconvenience, but always sentimental. Only about things worth keeping. Falco slid the property map toward me. Brandt's was marked in red. Sign the easement tonight, he said, and I will forgive the remaining penalties. You can continue baking for 6 months while we prepare demolition. I might even give you a kitchen in the new complex. Smaller, naturally, but more suited to your scale. There it was, the offer made to sound like mercy. I studied the map. My pulse was loud, but my voice was steady. This survey is incomplete. Falco's smile thinned. The 1984 Covenant reserves delivery access from Mercer Alley and gives Brandt's approval rights over structural changes that obstruct it. Your west tower blocks the route. Without my signature, the title remains contested. Without clean title, your financing condition fails. Silence. I had spent 18 months being treated like a woman too simple to understand the papers designed to remove her. Now every powerful man at the table understood what Falco had missed. Lucio did not look at Falco. He looked at me with open pride. Falco's face hardened. A technicality. A legal right, I said. Those are only technicalities when they belong to someone poorer than you. One of his men shifted near the wall. Lucio's guards responded without moving more than their eyes. Falco leaned forward. Be careful, Mrs. Brandt. Neighborhood businesses fail every day. Ovens break, inspectors find problems, windows shatter. The threat was soft enough to deny. The cut on my palm burned beneath its bandage. Lucio's fingers touched the stem of his glass once. Our signal. We leave now if you choose. I could have stood. I could have taken the guaranteed money and let him handle Falco. Instead, I placed my hand over Lucio. I'm not frightened yet, I said quietly. He searched my face, then nodded. Falco saw the exchange and mistook consent for weakness. That was his final mistake. He leaned back and looked at my body with lazy contempt. Lucio, truly, you could have any woman in this city, and you bring this to my table? What is she really, your wife or your cook? 2 men laughed because Falco did. The women went still. I felt the old heat climb my throat. But this time I did not lower my eyes. I am the woman who found the hole in your deal, I said, and the baker whose signature you could not bully out of her. If you need to call me fat to recover from that, at least be honest about which one of us is embarrassed. The room stopped breathing. I had answered for myself exactly as I promised. Then Lucio set down his glass. Lucio rose slowly. He did not shout. Men like Falco shout because they need the room to lend them power. Lucio carried his with him. She answered you, he said. Now I will. Falco lifted both hands. It was a joke between men. My wife is not a joke between men. The word wife crossed the table and struck something inside me. Falco glanced toward the unsigned alliance. Do not become emotional over a hired woman. Lucio's face emptied. That was the instant I knew Falco had gone too far. That's my wife you're laughing at, Lucio said. The fact that you cannot recognize loyalty unless you own it is why you will never understand either of us. Lucio, you broke her window, you threatened her livelihood, you lied about your title and placed incomplete papers in front of me. Then, when she exposed you without raising her voice, you attacked her body because her mind frightened you. He picked up the alliance document. This deal would make us both richer, Falco said. I am rich enough. Lucio tore the papers once. Falco stood so quickly his chair struck the wall. Every guard in the room changed posture. Lucio tore the papers again and set the pieces beside Falco's untouched plate. There is no alliance, he said, and understand what replaces it. Brandt's bakery remains open. Its employees remain safe. Its deliveries pass untouched. If an inspector so much as misplaces a form, if a stone touches that window, if one supplier receives a threatening call, I will not need proof before I hold you responsible. Falco's color drained. You would destroy a riverfront agreement for her? Lucio looked down at me. 8 nights at a window table. A bandage around my palm. His mother's sapphire on my finger. A fake history with more truth inside it than either of our real lives. It is already destroyed, he said. You simply told me what it would cost to keep it. He came around the table and offered me his hand. Not commanded, offered. I placed my hand in his. At the door, Falco made one last attempt. When the novelty fades, Lucio, remember that you chose a baker over an empire. Lucio stopped. No, I said before he could turn. He chose an honest business over a dishonest one. You are the only man here who thinks my body changes the math. Lucio's mouth curved. Then he opened the door for me, and we walked the full length of the restaurant while 12 powerful people watched the plus-size baker leave on the Mafia Don's arm. Outside, 3 black cars waited. One did not belong to Lucio. Its headlights came on as we reached the pavement. Lucio moved me behind him, and for one terrible second I thought Falco had decided to stop using words. The strange car rolled forward. Lucio's men closed around us, coats open, bodies forming a wall. He kept one arm behind him, his palm against my hip, holding me close without trapping me. The rear window of the other car lowered. An elderly woman in pearls looked out. Mrs. Brandt, she called. She had been seated beside Falco's wife. My family owns the bank financing the West Tower. Send me a copy of that covenant tomorrow. I dislike being lied to. Then her window rose and the car drove away. The breath left me in a sound halfway between a laugh and a sob. Lucio turned immediately. Are you hurt? Only by your assumption that every old woman in pearls is an assassin. In my defense, you have not met my aunt. It was exactly the wrong moment to laugh, which meant I could not stop. The tension broke. Lucio touched my cheek, then remembered himself and lowered his hand. May I? He asked. I caught his wrist and returned his palm to my face. You may. In the car, the city moved past in wet ribbons of gold. Lucio sat beside me, not across. Our shoulders touched. His mother's ring felt heavy on my hand. For several blocks, neither of us spoke. Finally, I said, that was not in the script. Very little after the covenant was in the script. You burned the deal? Yes. It protected 3 of your businesses, hundreds of jobs. I will find another route. Because he insulted me? Lucio looked out the window. Because he threatened you. Because he lied. Because any man who needs cruelty to restore his authority eventually turns that cruelty on his partners. All reasonable, all strategic, all incomplete. No lies, I said. His eyes closed briefly. When he faced me, the dawn was gone. There was only the man who read paper books at my window table. Somewhere between the first night and the broken glass, I stopped pretending, he said. I kept calling it strategy because strategy is something I know how to survive. Then you walked into that room wearing my mother's ring, and Falco threatened the life you built, and I understood there was no agreement he could offer me that was worth requiring you to sit there and absorb his contempt. My heart beat painfully. You could have told me, and made the payment feel like pressure, made every kind thing I said sound like a demand. You agreed to play my wife? You did not agree to manage my feelings? So you planned to say nothing? I planned to keep my word, pay you, make the bakery safe, and let you leave without ever wondering whether it was dangerous to refuse me. That sounds noble. It is cowardice with good manners. I looked down at our hands. When Falco laughed, I said, I told myself to survive 2 more hours and take the money. Then you stood up, and for 1 second I wanted the lie to be true. Lucio went completely still. Only 1 second? Do not negotiate while I am confessing. I apologize, continue. No, you ruined it. His laugh was soft and astonished. The car stopped outside Brandt's just before dawn. The repaired window reflected us side by side. Lucio reached into his coat and took out the envelope, and the warmth in his face disappeared behind the careful expression of a man preparing to lose something. We stood beneath the bakery sign while the sky turned from black to blue. Lucio held out the envelope. The full amount, he said. It cleared escrow at midnight. Enough to purchase the lease, repair the ovens, and maintain operating reserves for 18 months. Your lawyer has the confirmation. I did not take it immediately. You arranged a lawyer? Independent.
She represents you, not me. Her fee is included separately and creates no obligation. Of course he had thought of every string and cut it before handing me the money. The dinner failed, I said. You fulfilled your part. I failed mine. You chose to fail yours. Yes. I took the envelope. It was heavier than paper should have been. This was my mother's bakery, my employees' jobs. The old couple who split 1 almond cake every Friday. the school children who press their faces to the glass before opening. Every morning I thought I was about to lose, contained inside a clean white rectangle. The Falcon problem is also handled, he said.
The bank will freeze financing, pending title review. Your covenant gives you leverage. My people will not contact Falco unless he contacts you first. The decision remains yours. You listened. You required it. He removed the sapphire ring from my finger with great care and returned it to the velvet box. The bare skin beneath it felt colder than the dawn. The arrangement is complete, he said. You never have to see me again. There it was, not a declaration, an exit. He had spent 8 days protecting doors, windows, contracts, and boundaries. Now he was protecting my freedom from himself. You're not going to ask me to stay, I said. His voice roughened. No? Why? Because if I ask and you say yes, I will spend the rest of my life wondering whether you wanted me or feared disappointing me. I know what my name does to a room. I will not let it make your choice for you. And if I walk inside, pain crossed his face so quickly another person might have missed it, then I will make certain you are safe, and I will be grateful that for 8 nights someone told me the truth. Grateful? From a respectful distance, you would hate that. Completely. The truth made my eyes burn. Behind me was the bakery, saved and entirely mine. In front of me was a dangerous man offering no promise that his world would be easy. He could protect me from Falco. He could not protect me from loving him. He could not even protect himself from believing I might leave. So he gave me the money and the open door. And before I tell you what I did, I want your honest answer. Would you take the money, save the bakery, keep the clean freedom you fought for, and let the Mafia Don disappear before his dangerous world became yours? Or would you take his hand? Choose the man who burned a fortune for your dignity. Knowing love would not make his life simple or safe. I looked at the envelope. Then I looked at Lucio, and I chose the answer neither of us had rehearsed. I did not give the money back. That matters. In stories, the woman often proves her love by refusing the thing that gives her independence. She pushes away the money, abandons the shop, and says the man is all she needs. I had spent my entire life learning that needing a man is not the same as choosing one. I unlocked the bakery. Lucio remained on the pavement because I had not invited him in. I carried the envelope to the little window table and placed it beside the empty coffee cup from our last rehearsal. Then I returned to the door. He had not moved. I'm keeping the money, I said. His expression did not change, but his eyes went guarded. It is yours. I'm buying the lease in my name. Brant's remains mine. I decide what happens to the covenant, who works here, and whether your security ever crosses that door. Agreed. I will not become a soft thing you keep in a protected room. I work, I argue, I make my own decisions. Sometimes I make the wrong ones. I noticed. This is not the moment for courage. I thought it might be our first marital joke. We are not married. Also noticed. I stepped closer. And I'm taking your hand. For the first time since I met him, Don Lucio Sabatini looked as if he did not understand the language being spoken. Sadie. I earned the money. I am choosing you. They are not the same decision. That is why you can believe the second one. He searched my face for fear, debt, gratitude, or any hidden angle. I gave him the truth. I do not need you to save my bakery. It is already saved. I do not need your name to make me important. Mine is above the door. I want the man who asked before touching me when the whole city would have let him take. I want the man who could command protection and chose to negotiate it. I want the terrible dancer who understands contracts and cannot sweep glass. His breath broke into a laugh that did not quite survive. And I want the Don who stood up, I said, not because I could not defend myself, I did. I want him because after I used my own voice, he made sure the room understood it mattered. He looked like a man who had braced his entire body for abandonment and had no posture prepared for hope. There is no angle, I whispered. There is no debt. I am free, Lucio, and I am using that freedom to choose you. He lifted one hand, then stopped an inch from my face. May I? Yes. His palm settled against my cheek. May I kiss you? You negotiate too much, Sadie. Yes. He kissed me in the doorway of the bakery as the ovens warmed behind us and the first bus of the morning groaned past. It was not the hungry possession people imagine from men like him. It was careful for exactly 1 second, until I caught his coat and pulled him closer. Then it became honest. When we finally separated, his forehead rested against mine. I burned a riverfront alliance last night, he murmured. You also learned to sweep. Everyone had a difficult evening. He laughed against my mouth. I took the envelope. I took his hand. And because both choices were mine, neither one diminished the other. That was 2 years ago. Brant's is still on the corner. The sign has been restored, not replaced. The old ovens are gone, though I kept one brass handle mounted above the steel table because my mother touched it every morning for 39 years. We employ 14 people now. We supply 6 restaurants and a hospital kitchen. I teach 2 apprentices who believe dough is controlled by timers, and I enjoy watching them discover that attention matters more. Falcon Urban Holdings never built the West Tower. The bank froze financing when the elderly woman in pearls received my covenant. 3 other tenants found similar irregularities. Falco's partners discovered he had promised the same clean title to multiple investors. Powerful men can forgive cruelty. They become remarkably principled when lied to about money. I did not sell the easement. Instead, the neighborhood formed a cooperative. The laundromat reopened. Mr. Park's daughter brought back the grocery. Lucio offered capital once in writing at market terms with no control attached. I refused the first version. He revised it. That is romance when 2 stubborn adults own businesses. Lucio still comes before the morning rush. There is a Riscarzier card at the window table. Though everyone knows the reservation can be overturned by a tired nurse, a parent with a sleeping baby, or any old man who wants to read the newspaper in peace. The most feared Don in the city has been displaced from his own table by Mrs. Alvarez at least 9 times. He waits. People assume protection changed my life most. They imagine guards outside, black cars, doors opening before I reach them. The truth is quieter. Protection is Lucio checking whether I want advice before giving it. It is a plain car half a block away instead of men blocking the entrance. It is him learning the names of all 14 employees and never using them to get information about me. It is knowing that if I press one number, he answers, and knowing he respects me enough not to call that dependence. I changed his life too. He tells people the truth more often now. Not everyone. Let us remain realistic. But he has stopped treating loneliness like proof of strength. He speaks Mateo's name. He laughs loudly enough for employees to hear. He owns 3 aprons, all terrible. On the first anniversary of the dinner, he returned his mother's sapphire to me. This time there was no contract. He stood in the bakery after closing, held out the velvet box and said, I have spent a year trying to find a way to ask this without making you feel cornered. Have you considered getting to the question? Frequently. It has gone poorly. He opened the box. Sadie Brandt, will you marry me and keep your name, your bakery, your opinions, your terrible habit of correcting my grammar, and every door you require to remain open? What do you get? The truth. If I am fortunate. I made him wait 7 seconds because he had frightened me at least that long on the first night. Then I said yes. People still tell our story incorrectly. They say a Mafia Don rescued a fat baker. They say he bought my shop, defeated my enemy, and carried me into a safer life. That is not what happened. I found the flaw in Falco's deal. I defended my work at his table. I kept my name, my property, and the money I earned. Lucio did not give me a voice. He listened when I used it. And when a cruel man tried to reduce me to my body, Lucio did what protection should do. He did not stand in front of me and make me disappear. He stood beside me and made the whole room pay attention. We began with an arrangement. 8 nights, 1 dinner, 1 envelope, no lies. The dinner ended. The envelope changed hands. The borrowed ring came off. The no lies rule stayed. Maybe that is why the marriage works. He still says he forgot we were pretending when he stood up at Falco's table. I tell him he is wrong. He did not forget. For the first time in 20 years, he remembered who he was when money was no longer the most valuable thing in the room. And I remembered something too. Being protected does not mean being weak. Being loved does not mean being owned. And a woman can take the money, take the hand, keep her name, and still be the author of every part of her life. So tell me honestly, if you had been standing in that bakery doorway at dawn, with freedom in one hand and a dangerous man's heart in the other, would you have chosen take the money or take his hand? I took both, and I never apologized for either one. If Sadie and Lucio earned your attention, use the hype button below the video and give this story your points. It helps a new viewer find the channel. Then leave take the money or take his hand in the comments, and tell me which moment made the arrangement feel real to you.